Okay, we are on location in Prince George with Tracey Johnson today. I'm going to introduce Tracey because she has a lot of titles behind her name. Tracey, great to have you on the show. I don't want to botch this and give out the wrong information. I know you're a judge. You're a cheese competition judge.
Yep.
Let's start with that. Let's start with that as the title. What else are you?
So the cheese judging thing has been a bucket list thing for me for a very long time. It is a mark of respect in the industry that people know that you'll know what you're doing, that you know what things are supposed to taste like. And a cheese that's supposed to be a cheddar presents like a cheddar, and a cheese that's supposed to be blue presents blue, but you don't get blue on a cheese that shouldn't be. So knowing all the different categories of cheese and stuff is really important to the work to be able to taste properly. I am a certified cheese professional, which is abbreviated to CCP because it's far too long to keep saying it, which basically means I know a lot about the cheese industry. I know a lot about making and selling cheese. Although I've never actually sold a piece of cheese, I'm not a monger. That's a separate profession and one that I do not aspire to. I have a lot of respect for mongers, but I couldn't do that job. It's physically too demanding, like lifting up a 72-pound wheel of cheese and cutting it in half in a way that's theatrical enough for the customers. No. Not my lane. My lane's over here. I like making the cheese. I like making cheesemakers, and I like helping people enjoy cheese. And that's basically, as you say, I've got a lot of titles. My main title is Cheese Enabler.
Cheese Enabler. I like that.
Cheese Enabler. It's nice and easy. It's 2 words. You know, I am studying for the American Cheese Society Certified Cheese Sensory Evaluator, which basically means, again, you blind taste 12 cheeses, determine what they are, if they are to type, and then you blind smell 10 different adulterations. So things like garlic, things like clover, Band-Aid could feature, I know. But you know what that smell is. You instantly know what that smell is when I say that. So it's 50 or 60 different categories, and it could be any one of these things, and you have to be able to smell it. So being able to sensorily evaluate those things is something you can train for, and I have been for the last 4 years now. So.
Wow. Does that also go by texture and taste, or just the smell?
Yeah, there is the single attributes, they call it, because they've taken milk and they've put something in it. The single attributes are, it's just one thing, whereas the 12 cheeses, you get, 12 cheeses in flights of 3, and you have to identify them and then judge them as if they were in blind competition. So as if you were judging at the American Cheese Society, judging in competition every year, which I would love to do. That's still on my bucket list. World Cheese Awards and American Cheese Society is still on my bucket list for judging, but I'll get there.
What other cheeses do you teach people to make?
So feta is the gateway. It's the beginner cheese. It's the best one to take as a beginner. The next one I recommend after that is cheddar, because to get to cheddar, you go through cottage cheese, you go through poutine curds, and then you get to cheddar. It's all the same cheese. It's all the same process. Like you stop here, you've got cottage cheese. You carry on to here, you've got poutine curds. Every single time I teach that class, somebody will message me afterwards and say, yeah, it didn't make it home. Ate it on the way. Every single time.
Really?
But yeah, when you come to class, as you know, you bring home everything you need to make another 24 pounds of cheese at home, so you can back up another batch. It's fine.
Yeah. So cheddar is that quick of a turnaround?
Cheddar, as a cheddar, no, you've got to wait 3 months to eat it. But if you want to eat it on the day, you can eat it as poutine curds. Cheddar has this weird thing with the cultures, the way that there are 2 different cultures involved. So the first culture, the mesophilic, works straight away, and that changes the pH of the milk, and that affects the flavor. But the thermophilic doesn't kick in until much later in the process, like 5 or 6 days later. So up until day 4, you can eat it fresh as a cheese curd. It will be squeaky for the first 2 days. From day 5, 6-ish, it starts to taste real bad, and you're not going to want to eat it for the next 2 months.
Really?
Because that's when that other culture is kicking in, and it's changing the long-chain fatty acids. It's changing the way that those flavor compounds are formed in the cheese. even after you've salted it, even after it's in the refrigerator, it's still changing, it's still aging. So it develops its flavor, and it tastes really, really good, then it tastes bad, and then it tastes really, really good.
Is this the cheese that you were told was impossible to make? Yeah?
Yeah, I've discussed this with my tutor at University of Guelph, which is the best dairy science program in Canada. I studied the cheesemaker certificate with them, which is a 2-year program. I got straight A's for the first time in my life. It was wonderful. If I'd known that studying cheese would be where I would excel, I could have done this years ago, you know? But yeah, I discussed this cheese with the dairy manager there, and he said, no, this won't work. You're crazy, kind of, you know, get back in your chair kind of thing. You don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, maybe just try it, because hundreds of people all around the world have made this cheese now. It's been featured by Gavin Weber, who is the YouTube cheesemaker, pretty much. He has over 300,000 followers, and he has, with my permission, done a copy of my yesterday's cheese. It also features in Lisa Peterson's book. Again, with my permission, they're good friends of mine. So I'm quite happy to share, you know.
Yeah.
And the next time I went back to Guelph, about 3 months after, the dairy guy came up to me, and he looked at me, and he got real close, and he whispered at me, "You're a witch." It shouldn't work. The process is different to the way that normal cheese is made. You know, if you remember in class, we added the culture, we waited. We added the rennet, we waited. We cut, we stirred, we drained, we smooshed all the way out, and that was the cheese done. Yesterday's is a different ball game. You add the culture, you don't wait. You add the rennet at the same time. So there is no pH change from the culture until you're in the renneting stage, and the rennet changes the way that the pH changes after the culture is added. And then you hold it for an hour, then you cut it, but you don't stir it. But you then hold it for an hour and a half. At temperature, just leave it be. The whey starts to seep out, and during that process, that's when you get your pH curve. That's when the pH dips down. It doesn't dip far enough down for this to be a long-aged cheese. You can't keep it for 6 months or whatever. You know, it's a 2-week cheese. But that's what I designed it for. I designed it to be made one day, eaten the next day, or eaten in the next week. And you keep it in your regular fridge. And just, in Europe, we have what we call table cheeses. There is always cheese on the table, normally under a little glass dome that your kids always forget to put back on after they've taken a piece of cheese. There's a knife right there. You hack off a piece, you wander around and do what you're doing. It's how we snack. And there isn't that kind of thing here, because we keep our houses a lot warmer here than we do in Europe, because it's a lot colder outside here than it is certainly in southern England. You know, we don't get down to the temperatures that we have here in PG. So table cheese doesn't really exist. So this is kind of every time you open the fridge, snacking cheese. Kind of, it's there while you're looking for what you really want to eat.
Right, right. So this yesterday's cheese then, you made it, it was your own experiment then.
Yeah.
Do you have the knowledge to know how these rennet and cultures are going to interact enough that you knew that this was going to work, or? I
do now. When I invented the recipe, it was literally trial and error. It was a case of, I know how cheese is made. I know the order in which things are supposed to be done, but what if we mess around with those? What happens if? And I keep really good notes. And there were 40 or 50 batches that weren't right. It wasn't bad, it didn't fail, you know, but it didn't do what I wanted it to do. So I kept tweaking it until I got to the recipe as it stands now.
Wow.
And yeah, just keep good notes.
Yeah,
you know.
What kind of tweaks are you talking about after 50
Things
batches?
like, do you hold it for an hour after cutting or an hour and a half? An hour isn't long enough, the culture doesn't do its job. Testing the pH reveals that it's not going to move the pH into a safe range for long-term cheese. So I don't want to put out a recipe that's not going to be safe. So this recipe originally was an ageable cheese, and I've learnt now enough to know that that's probably not an ideal use of this cheese. It should be one and done. It's a quick, easy, beginner-friendly, starter cheese. It's very mild. It's kid friendly as well, because some cheeses are a little aggressive, and you know, children don't relish that really strong, aggressive flavor profile.
What is your cheese, your yesterday's cheese? What's the texture and taste like?
It's a hard, grateable, sliceable, meltable on day 1 and 2, but not afterwards. Because again, the pH changes, and that's vital for melting in cheese. And it's kind of mild like a Gouda.
Okay, Gouda. That's
But like a young Gouda. It's, you know, it's from yesterday. It's not going to taste like a 6-month-old cheese. You know, I can do good things, but I can't do miracles.
What makes the cheddar in Canada orange?
It all stems back from a historical con job. Basically, if you have a pure breed cow, it will give you 6 or 7% butter fat in the milk. So when you milk that, it will split. Maybe you'll remember cream top milk, you know, where the cream sits at the top, it's not homogenized. You could then skim that cream off and make butter with it, which your average farmhouse wife was doing. What was left of the milk was then around 2-3% fat, which is what we today would call whole milk, which is laughable. But that would be what you would then use to make the cheese with. Some cheeses in the UK are protected designation of origin, and some of those laws specifically relate to the amount of butter fat that you can have in that cheese, or that you must have in that cheese. So single Gloucester, for instance, is much lower fat than double Gloucester because it has double the amount of cream in it. That is actually mandated by law. So people who had a hybrid cow would sell their milk at market and get a better price than people who had just like a house cow, a mutt, you know, backyard breed kind of thing, because it would give less butter fat. Now, they would actually adulterate the milk, and originally with carrot juice, to make it look more yellowy, so that people thought, hey, this is a hybrid cow and it's got a lot more fat in. I can make butter and I can make cheese with this milk. So it was a con. And then those people went over to America in the 15 and 1600s when the British colonized everywhere, and took that with them. And then, you know, the Americans just take everything a little too far. And so instead of having a few drops of colouring, they put a whole lot of colouring in. There is also a story about, I think it was Louis XIV, may have been Louis XV, in France. He was at war with the Netherlands, and he decided he wasn't going to import Gouda anymore. That was it. We're not buying from them. And he charged the French cheesemakers with design a cheese like Gouda, but you have to make it bright orange, so I know it didn't come from over there. There, Mimolette was born. Mimolette is considered the most dangerous cheese on the planet because it's round, like a cannonball, but it's very, very hard on the outside. They actually use cheese mites when they're aging it, and the cheese mites burrow in through the rind, and because they've broken the rind, there's air exchange, and it dehydrates a lot more. So you get this kind of candied cheese effect from Mimolette. If you ever get a chance to try it, it's fabulous. There are no mites left on it. There are no beasties involved. You can't import that cheese to Canada unless it's been vacuumed and then sealed in wax so that there's nothing alive. But it's the way that the moisture level changes the flavour profile. It blows my mind, but it's really, really difficult to cut. So more cheesemongers injure themselves trying to cut into Mimolette than any other cheese.
As an international cheese judge, if you're judging a cheese and there happens to be like this type of cheese there, you're still going to say no?
I would recuse myself from judging that, yeah. As a judge, you have discretion. If you recognise a cheese, I was saying to you earlier, one of my friends in the UK learnt in my group and has now won World Cheese Awards, International Cheese and Dairy Awards, and he took the Best Blue in Show at the British and Irish Cheese Awards in March, where I was judging. Yeah. You can, if you recognise a cheese, or if you think a cheese doesn't look right, like you choose not to eat it, you can you can actually choose not to eat it. And every competition, things happen, you know, they try and keep the cold chain, they try and keep refrigeration, they try and keep the beasties out, but occasionally something will happen and you'll look at a cheese and be like, I don't think I want to risk that.
What is a cheese competition like?
Well, basically, it's generally not open to the public to start with. So you all turn up, you all check in, you get like an apron or something that denotes you as a judge so people know that you're supposed to be there nibbling on all of these cheeses. You have a trio of judges, so you never judge on your own. You're always discussing the cheese with two other experts. One of you is designated as the scribe, i.e. writing down everything that we said about the cheese, because it's not just a case of, does this cheese win a medal? It's a case of, do we have any feedback for the person who made this cheese that we think they would benefit from knowing? You know, moisture level is too high on this cheese for the type of category that it's in, or this was a good example of this cheese, but on this occasion, the smell was an issue. You got marked down on the smell. You know, that kind of thing can help the cheesemaker moving forward. If they vacuum seal the cheese, for instance, and it comes out the other end and it smells of ammonia. As a cheesemaker myself, I know how to fix that. And I'm assuming that the person who's making this cheese at competition level knows how to fix that. But if I give them the note and they hadn't thought of it or they didn't know it was happening, then they're sending this cheese out and it smells fine. When it gets to the other end, it doesn't smell so fine. So it's feedback for them as well as, yeah, it's great to win a medal. It's great to be able to say, this is an award-winning cheese.
Okay.
You know, so we mark out of 50 for the British and Irish, and you get 15 points for appearance, and texture, and then 25 for taste. And then there's another 10 points, 15 points, my math is off, that you can award or you can withhold. And that's for, oh my goodness, this cheese blew my socks off. You know, this is a gold. Between 45 and 50 points is a gold. Between 35 and 45 is a silver. Anything above 25, you get a bronze. So they encourage us to give as many medals as we can. It's not a case of this whole category can only have 3 winners. Each cheese could achieve gold. And then we have to pick. The hardest part is picking which of the golds goes on to be the super gold. And then you get into the super jury, which I was privileged to be a part of in Bath this year. And you taste the 13 finalists. And there are 6 expert judges with a floating arbiter, shall we say, to be the 7th if there's a deadlock. And we argued a lot about which cheese was going to be number 2. Number 1 was clear. As we tasted each of the cheeses, we were like, okay, that's my number 1 so far. Try this one. Oh, this one's definitely my number 1 now. Yeah, nothing else is touching this one. That one ended up being the winner. We all picked the winner unanimously straight off the bat. Number 2, we fought like cat and dog because there were 2 really, really, really good lactic set cheeses. Now, lactic set means you don't use too much rennet, if any at all. You set it using just the cultures. So think about like a log of Chev, you know, the goat's cheese that you would buy in the supermarket that's been vacuum sealed. These were high examples of a cheese like that. One of them had a bloomy rind on it like a brie, and one of them had an ash coat on it, which is done to control the pH on the surface. And we tested these cheeses to destruction. We actually had to send out for another piece of the second cheese so that we could finish the judging, because we just kept going round and round and round. We couldn't, they were both exemplary. You know, if we could have given 2 second place, then we would have. There isn't a third place, unfortunately. It's literally first or second in that competition. Wow. So, but to get onto the super jury, you're in the best 13 cheeses in the country, which, you know, England has a lot of cheeses. I think there were 600 cheeses at that competition. And to get into the final 13 is real, you know what you're doing. That's kudos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about these top 3 cheeses, like the one that you knew for sure won. and then the two that you couldn't, it was a hard decision to make. Like, what makes these cheeses so special?
You're testing it not just against the other cheeses there, but you're testing it against type. So the one that won was an Alpine style cheese. Now that would, imply it comes from the Alps. It doesn't. It has to come from Britain or Ireland. Otherwise, it can't be in this competition. It's boundaried. So when I tried, I think it's called Burford. The winner, I think, was called Burford. But when I tried that cheese, if I didn't know for certain that it wasn't Hollahocker, I would have sworn on a stack of Bibles. And Hollahocker is one of my favourite cheeses. It comes from Switzerland, and it is a washed rind, so they wash the outside of the cheese, and that gives it this like funky umami kind of flavour. It's almost like roasted chicken skin. You get that kind of flavour on the outside of this cheese, and it's like they haven't done anything to it. They haven't added anything to it. It's just the bacteria and the cultures that they have in that cave.
Wow.
And it's fantastic. If you ever get a chance to try Hollahocker, go for it, for sure. I have a wedge this big in my fridge right now.
So Vancouver, like Vancouver, Kelowna, those places where you're going to go teach this, are they better known cheese destinations, or are they just big?
They're foodie. If you're a foodie, I'm also partnering with a guy called Patrick McGuigan, who is a very well-known food writer in the UK, well-known worldwide actually as an educator. And he's going to be teaching in Toronto and New York City. I specifically requested not to be teaching in the States because I'm an immigrant and they don't like immigrants there at the moment. So it's just easier if I stick to my side of the border, which I'm quite happy to do. So all of Western Canada is wide open for me. I can pick where I want to teach, and Fine Vintage have schools in 40 different cities now. So they've already got the infrastructure set up. They've got the organisation with the local college or university to rent the space. They've got people in the area that can turn up and pour the wine professionally, because you can't just give people a whole glass of wine. They have to have like a 2-ounce pour. Otherwise, you're not going to be taking the exam at the end of the day and you're not going to be driving home. So, yeah, it seems to... cheese and wine, cheese and cider, cheese and anything that makes you feel good, because cheese activates casomorphines, which your brain treats them like morphine. It can actually be addictive, but it also can actually get you mildly high. So,
Really?
Now don't go home and eat a whole bunch of cheese and then, call me up and tell me off because it didn't get you tipsy. But it's been shown to hit the same pleasure centers in the brain that, having a good time, playing a sport that you're good at, or drinking alcohol can do. So, cheese is great. Why wouldn't you want to drink with it?
So how did that all come together then? Because if you were in the UK and you weren't interested in cheese and you came to Canada, you still weren't really interested in cheese. What developed that interest?
I think it was a case of, if it's always there and you can have it whenever you want it, you don't really want it that much. But if somebody says to you, right, okay, no internet for the rest of the day, or you can't eat this food on your diet, what's the first thing you think about?
Think about that food all the time.
Yeah. It drives you crazy. So once I realized how easy it was to make, and I find the process of cheese making therapeutic, because you have set times, you have to do the thing when it needs to be done. You can't force it, you can't rush it, and you can't you can massage the timetable a little bit, but, really, you've got to do the thing when it's expecting it to be done, or it won't work properly. So I like that kind of rigidity. It's therapeutic to me. When I'm making cheese, everyone else can go away. I'm busy. This is my kitchen now. I'm doing this thing, and I'm going to be here until 5 o'clock. Go away. That kind of thing.
But why would you choose to make cheese when you can go to the grocery store and they've got a white one, an orange one, and one with blue in it, and you're pretty much set?
Right. Yes. Yes, you can go to the store and you can buy a cheese which is made in the style of a cheddar. But if you go to Cheddar Gorge in Somerset and you try the cheese that they make there, which is not orange, by the way, you try their cheeses, which have been cave aged for 12 months, cloth bound. So the outside of that cheese, the rind is all pitted and gnarly, and the mold has grown and been brushed off. But it's grown on the outside of the cloth. So once you clean the cloth, take the cloth off, then the cheese underneath is safe. It's just a completely different flavor profile. It's like saying, you know, you've got a bicycle and you've got a Learjet. They will both eventually get you where you're going to go, but one of them's going to be a lot faster and a lot more comfortable. You know, for me, good cheese is the Learjet.
Now, one of the things you also said, you have a student who learned from you. Now, this student went on and ended up at a competition that you were judging.
Yep.
So how do you feel about that? As being...
I was so proud of him. You know, super excited for him. The cheese that he makes is very visually identifiable. So it's kind of... He was in a category adjacent to the category I was judging, so I wasn't originally judging his cheese. He then ended up in the super jury, so I had to recuse myself from judging that cheese because I know full well who makes that cheese and I want him to win. I want to give him the super gold, you know, because he's a friend of mine and he deserves it. And I know that he's like a one-man band who's set up his creamery, excuse me, in a garage. He's had this garage completely refitted. So it's stainless steel, you know, certifiable kitchen, and he makes all the cheeses by hand.
Wow.
So I wanted him to win-win. I didn't actually tell him. I knew, but I didn't tell him because we went to the awards dinner together. And I knew he'd gotten a gold. I knew he'd gotten super gold and that he was in the super jury. And I knew he didn't win. But I didn't tell him that he won Best Blue in the show. And his jaw hit the ground. It was brilliant. It was a fabulous moment.
Yeah.
It was really good.
You said we've been at it for 9,000 years. And then you're talking about a competition where people are like introducing new cheeses, like, and you've created a new cheese and other people are coming up with their own spins on it. Mm-hmm. I can't believe how many varieties there must be then.
Yeah, there's like 4,000 different types of cheese.
Wow.
But that could be, cheddar is not a protected name. West Country cheddar is a protected name. It has to come from one of 3 counties in the west of England. But cheddar can be made anywhere. Anyone can make a cheese and call it cheddar. There is a specific process that you're supposed to go through, the cheddar ring. That is a process. And that's what makes a cheddar. But there are several other cheeses which are cheddared that aren't cheddar. So top of my head, what have we got? Gloucester. Cotswolds, several cheeses from the Cotswolds are cheddared, but they aren't cheddar. So specific, like Wensleydale, that kind of thing. Okay. Go through the same process, but they don't have the same outcome.
Okay, so something along the process changes it and it branches off into like a different style.
It's times and temps and the culture that you use and how long you allow the culture to ripen for. So you sit the culture for 45 minutes, you get an entirely different result than if you sit the culture for an hour and 10.
Really?
You get an entirely different result.
What are some of your favorite cheeses?
My best favorite ever is Le Gruyere AOP 18-month cave aged. And
okay.
That...
Might have to say that one more time.
Yeah. You might know it as Gruyere.
Yeah. I'm actually familiar with that name and I really like it too.
Yeah, it's trademarked as Le Gruyere AOP, which is Appellation Origine Protégée. I'm butchering the Swiss there, my apologies, but it basically means it's a protected designation of origin cheese. So it can only be made in a certain place and there are specific rules. Gruyere, for instance, the cow has to be milked within 12.3 miles of where the creamery is going to make that cheese. And it has to be aged in a certain set of caves for a certain period of time. It has to be raw milk. It has to be animal, rennet, not vegetarian. Some cheeses are not vegetarian. Because they use an animal enzyme to coagulate them. So if the cheeses have letters after their name, they're less likely to be vegetarian, but they're more likely to be good.
Good.
Yeah, I always tell people if you're looking for a good cheese to buy in a store, it's like when you're picking a lawyer, get one with letters after their name.
So when you snack on cheese, are you just grabbing like one piece of cheese and eating it, or do you like cut up a bunch of different kinds and give yourself a little?
It depends. If I'm having a cheese board, then yes, I'll have a cheese board. If I'm standing and looking in the fridge trying to decide what I want to make to dinner tonight and I'm snacking on cheese while I'm there, then I just I have about 50 different varieties of cheese in my fridge at the moment.
What?
Yeah. Well, I travel for work, and it's deductible if I buy cheese.
Okay.
So, and I'm studying still, so I have a lot of different types of cheese on the go all at the same time. So yeah, I will grab a piece of something and then cut a chunk off, depending on if it's a slicer or a wedger or.
If people want to learn to make cheese, if they want to make cheese at home, if they're watching this show right now and they haven't even considered making it themselves, what should their first steps be?
I would suggest join Learn to Make Cheese on Facebook and just look at what people are posting, because within 2 or 3 days, you'll get a pretty good understanding of what most people are doing wrong. And you start on the right foot, then you'll be fine. So we have a frequently asked questions, which nobody ever reads until they've made one of the problems happen for themselves that's in the frequently asked questions, and they could have avoided it. Yeah. So I tend to send people, go and read the FAQ. It'll take you 20 minutes or so. Get a cup of tea first and just sit down and have a quick read. If you've got any questions, hit me up. We'll sort you out.
Yeah.
Other than that, go to a class. Go to your local cheese shop and ask them if they can tell you more about the cheese. If you have a cheese shop nearby that has someone behind the counter that's got CCP designation, which I have, it means they've got at least 4,000 hours in the business and they've passed an exam which is rigorously defended. It's been compared to the bar exam for lawyers. It is, yeah, the exam is very, very rigorously checked and rechecked and normalized, and they have all of these external processes to check that the exam is as difficult this year as it was last year, but not much harder, So yeah, if you find somebody that says they're an ACS CCP, it means they know what they're talking about.
And I got one last question. I bought a smoker this year. Mm-hmm. Have you smoked cheese?
Yeah, it's really hard to light.
It's hard to light the cheese?
No, so you're going to want to cold smoke. So if you've got a smoker, you get the little box of the chips. If you put that there, it will smoke, but it will also heat up. So you then need a cookie tray with ice cubes on it. Put that above the heat source, but below the cheese. So
Okay.
the smoke can get through, but the heat won't.
And it cools the smoke, is it? Yeah. And you've done that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Other thing is, I had a barbecue that was dead. It was done. So I gutted that. I lined the inside with tin foil. And then I put the smoker box over here, and I had the cheeses all over here on a rack. There was no real heat. I put an ice tray there as well. There was no real heat. So that that smoked out really quite well.
All right. Excellent. Okay. Well, Tracey, awesome chatting with you again, as usual. And good luck in the future.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching this episode of StoryHive On Location Prince George. If you want to be our next guest, scan the QR code on the screen and get in touch with us. I'm Jeff Grunding, and from everyone here at StoryHive On Location Prince George, thanks for watching.